or this one. Again, there's the big brackets here, the B for brackets. So let's do this inside. So inside the brackets, let's do another BEDMAS. Inside the brackets, there's no brackets. There's no exponents, but there is a division. So let's do this one first. So this stays the same. This actually stays the same. I'm just doing this one. 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And this stays the same. I like writing straight up and down because this all stays the same until I actually deal with it. Now in my BEDMAS, I still have to deal with the brackets. So let's deal with that. So this is the same times 3 minus 2 is 1. And now I'm going to do BEDMAS again. No brackets, no exponents, no division, but there's a multiplication. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1. And the answer is 3. So in BEDMAS, no brackets, no exponents, no division, multiplication. So I'm going to do multiplication first. So 9 times 2 is 18. 8 plus 18. If you need a calculator, use it. If you don't, that's awesome. You're good at mental math. 26. Cool. Let's do BEDMAS again. No brackets, no exponents, division. Oh yeah, we have a division here. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4 minus 2, this stays the same. Now we're going to do the BEDMAS. No brackets, no exponents, no more divisions, no multiplication, no addition. Well, we have a subtraction now. So we can do this. 4 minus 2 is 2. Cool. All right, I'm going to use BEDMAS again. Oops. Okay, so brackets, no exponents, a division. So I'm going to do the division first. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I still have this stuff. Now I'm going to do multiplication because division's done. Multiplication. So I have 30 plus my 4. And now I just have addition left. 30 plus 4 is 34. Awesome. We're getting through these. Let's look into the first. It's brackets. Let's do the brackets first. It's really tempting to do this one first. We've got to do the brackets first. So 7 times 6 plus 4 is 10 divided by 2. Cool. Now we're going to do no exponents. We can do the division. So 7 times 10 divided by 2 is 5. And now we can do the multiplication. 7 times 5 is 35. All right. Let's see if I can scroll right up to here. Again, I'm going to write my BEDMAS just so I don't have to remember it in my head. It's one less thing to keep in my brain. All right. Brackets. Yeah, let's do the brackets first. So it's 4 plus 32 divided by 4 minus, and what's in the brackets? 3 times 2, which is 6. So I finished with the brackets. There's no exponents. If you don't know what an exponent is, we're going to cover that next week. And you go, oh, those things. No problem. Let's do the division. Are there divisions? Yeah, there's a division here. This is one of those ones that no one ever remembers on your multiplication tables. If you do, you're a hero. 32 divided by 4 is 8 minus 6. This stays the same. Cool, we finished with the division. There's no multiplication. There is an addition, so let's do the addition. 4 plus 8 is 12 minus 6. And then the last thing is subtraction. 12 minus 6 is 6. That wasn't very nice. I wrote all over this next question. So. Okay, let's do brackets first. Oh, hey, there's the brackets. So 21 plus 15 minus 5 inside the brackets. It's 10, I believe. Yeah, that's right. Times 3. The next is there's no exponents, no division. There is a multiplication. So let's do that one. 21 plus 30. And now we can do the addition. 21 plus 30 is 51. But you'll understand it, so that's good. I was about to do the division, but I can't. I got to do the brackets first. So let's do the brackets. 24 divided by 2 minus, what's in the brackets? 8 minus 4 is 4 times 2. Now I'm going to do the exponents. There are none. Division. Okay, let's do the division. Oops, I'm going to add one more. Cool. So 24 divided by 2. Oh, wow. That really didn't look good. Hang in there with me, guys. 12 minus 4 times 2. Here we go. We've got a division. There's a multiplication. So let's do the multiplication next. I'm running out of room. I should have made it smaller. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm just replacing the 4 times 2, which is the 8. So 12 minus 8 is equal to 4. So I'm just going to write that up here. That was a bit messy. I'll try to write a bit smaller here in this next one. Okay, here's the test of all tests until we come to the next one. Okay, so let's do this. Brackets. There's brackets everywhere. So let's look at this one. I'm going to use the brackets first. There's my first set of brackets. At the same time, I need to be doing this set of brackets. And I'm going to do these brackets until I get a single number inside this bracket. So inside of this, there's the first set of brackets. So I want to simplify inside of this bracket because that's my first order again, inside of this big bracket. So I'm just going to rewrite this. And I want to bring that down. That's 6 times 8 is going to be 48. Again, that's one of those tricky ones to remember. Cool. Now inside of this bracket still, I've done all the brackets, no exponents, but I have a division. So I want to do the division. So this stays the same. 48 divided by 2 is going to be 24. And then finally inside this bracket, I've done the brackets, exponents, the divisions, multiplication, which there weren't any, but I want to do the addition. So this is going to be 27. And that's just for this side, just for this bracket. If I calculate all these following the BEDMAS rule, I would get 27. I still have to do this half of the equation, so let's do that then. So in this side, here, you know what, I'm going to even do this, a slightly different flavor. I'm going to do BEDMAS over here, inside of this bracket. So inside of this purple set of brackets, I'm going to do this BEDMAS. So is there a bracket inside? Yeah, it's this bracket. Inside of this bracket, we need to start BEDMAS again. So I should probably choose an even bright or lighter color of purple. In here, there's no brackets inside this brackets. There's no exponents. There is no division. There is a multiplication. So let's do this one first. So I'm just going to copy all this stuff here. But 3 times 3 is 9 plus 3. You see how this stays, oops. This stays the same, this stays the same, this stays the same. It's just these two that we're joining into one number. And this also stays the same. Now, inside of this bracket, I've done the multiplication. I need to do my addition. So 9 plus 3, if this helps. Sometimes that helps. So you join those two. And then inside of this bracket, the last thing that we need to do, because we got rid of this bracket now, we're going to start on this BEDMAS. So no brackets anymore inside the brackets, no exponents. We're going to do the division. So this is going to be 3. Now, what we didn't do is we didn't, and this is the trickiest part here. This is the question so far that we have. I'm just a little bit crooked. 27 divided by 3, which is going to be 9. And if you got it, you're golden. You're doing awesome. Grasp of what we're talking about here. So all things negative, and this is subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and adding negative numbers. Let's look at the expression. So 0 minus 3. I like to think of this, the minus as walking backwards, and the number as which way he's facing. And I'll explain this here in a second. So he's facing forward, or in the positive direction. So we're taking 0 and we're subtracting 3. So it's like he's stepping backwards. So he started 0, 1, 2, 3 backwards, and he ends at -3. Again, this is super basic. I just want to cover it over so that everyone understands, because it will get a bit more complicated. It's like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so again, we've been starting at 0. I want to do 4 minus 6. So starting at 4, so I can even circle this 4 on the number line. It's going to walk backwards because it's a negative, and he's facing forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's going back 6 steps. He ends at -2. Now, this is fine if you have a number line and you're drawing everything, but what if I say, what's 38 minus 75? It's like, I'm not drawing a number line for that. That's craziness. And so there's a way to do this that it's in my brain, it's the easiest way. There's lots of different ways to do this, but this is the easiest. So another way of looking at this is I sort of divide these two numbers and I say, okay, it's a +4 or just a regular 4, and there's a -6. Now, are there more positives or more negatives in here? So is 4 bigger than 6, or is the negative bigger than? And again, it's not greater than or less than. It's like, do I have more negatives or do I have more positives? Well, I have 6 negatives. So this is the winner here. So the answer is going to be negative. I have some positives. I'm taking even more negatives away. So it's going to end up in the negative direction. And then what you can do is in your head, you can say, okay, let's take the biggest number minus the smallest number, which is 2. But I know that the answer is negative because there's more negatives. So the answer is -2. Now, there's probably going to be a pile of people shaking their head going, what are you talking about? And hopefully this will make sense after I do another couple of these. All right. What is 2 minus 10? So that's the question here. So again, on the number line, we can start at 2. We walk backwards. This is backwards here. Facing forwards. Facing forward, start at 2, walk backwards 10 towards the negative sign. What I do is I'm going to break this up into the -10 and the +2. I'm going to say, okay, which has more? Which are there more of? More negatives or more positives? Well, there's way more negatives. There's 10 negatives versus 2 positives. So the winner is going to be negative. So the answer is going to be negative. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the biggest number minus the smallest number. 10 minus 2 is 8. But the answer is going to be a negative because I have way more negatives. So I'm just going to add this negative here. So the answer is -8. Let's keep going here. Here's the toughest one. What happens when we subtract a negative number? Sort of the same thing as turning around and walking backwards. So 3 minus -5. And I put in these brackets only to show you that so it doesn't look like 3 minus -5. And you're like, what the heck is that? Is that 1 minus or not? I put in these brackets just to say that we're saying 3 minus a -5. This one means walk backwards. But this -5, if you have a negative in there, it means to face backwards, face towards the negative way. So now you see his baseball cap is facing the negatives. And he's going to walk backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the same thing as like adding 5. If you're subtracting a negative, it's the same thing as adding. So 3 minus -5 is the same thing as 3 plus 5, which is an easy one because it's 8. And we see that there. So again, if you want to color this set of clouds here, because this is really a good note, this is the important thing to remember. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. All right, let's do some examples here. 3 plus -5 is the same thing as 3 minus 5. Or it's like saying you're going to face backwards and you're going to walk forwards. 3 minus 5, you're going to look at the two different numbers, +3 or -5, which has more. So if the negatives, more negatives or more positives, it's more negatives. So the answer is going to be negative. Then I'm going to take the bigger number, regardless of the sign, I'm going to take the bigger number minus the smaller number. 5 minus 3 is 2. But it's negative, so the answer is going to be negative 2. Again, this is really hard to explain and really hard to go through. I hope that this is making sense. Okay, it's your turn on this one. I'll give you 10 seconds or 20 seconds to sort of get a head start. Then I'm going to explain through it. Again, if you're joining us, welcome. We've been going for a little bit, but I am recording this, so, or part of this anyways, and so I'm hoping that I'll be able to share this recording with you somehow. Also, if you want, you can mute yourself, and you can definitely turn off your video. I don't need to see you if you don't want me to see you. Personally, I hate to see myself when I'm teaching on my screen. All right, here we go. Let's talk about this. 5 plus negative 8. So this is like moving forward, facing backwards. Oops. But you know what? You're not going to draw, move forward. And again, there's lots of different ways you can think about this. This is the same thing as saying 5 minus 8. And that's maybe the easiest one. So I'm going to compare my positives and my negatives. I have, oops, sorry, I'm going to write that in there, 5 minus 8. I have more negatives than I do positives. So the answer is going to be negative. I'm going to take my bigger number minus my smaller number. It doesn't drop the signs. 8 minus the 5 gives me 3, but the answer is negative. So it's actually going to be negative 3. Now, it's really good to know this. If you have this on a test, I would use my calculator, honestly. 5 plus negative 8. Just remember, just find that negative button on your calculator. And again, I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll bring up a number of pictures and show you, okay, let's make sure that everyone understands that. Okay, let's do this one. 4 minus 10. I have positive, or 4 positives minus 10 negatives, or 10 negatives. Way more negatives, so the answer is going to be negative. I'm going to take my biggest number minus my smallest number. 10 minus 4 is 6, but it's negative. The answer is negative, so my answer is going to be negative 6. Okay, let's keep going here because I do want to I don't have much more time to go, so I'm going to just sort of race through these a little bit. There's only one more page after that, I think. You have 6, you have minus 9, so you have 6 positives and 9 negatives. So there's more negatives, so the answer is going to be negative. You take the biggest number. When I drop the signs, the biggest number minus the smallest number gives me 3, but the answer is negative, so it's minus 3. And that makes sense if we drew our little thing here. And we started, that's 0, and this is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're at minus 3 here. All right, these are the best ones. 1 minus a negative 10. Remember what we said up here? I think it was up here, wasn't it? Subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So 1 minus a negative 10 is like 1 plus 10, which is 11. Oops, not a minus. So again, 2 negatives, we can do 5 plus 3 instead of minus a negative 3, which is going to be 8. Super easy. And these are about as complicated as I can make them. Negative 5 minus a negative 7. Well, these two minuses turn into a plus. Oops, should be that pointing to that plus. So negative 5 plus 7. So 5 negatives, 7 positives. There's more positives, so the answer is going to be positive, and I'm going to take the big number minus the smallest number, 2, and it's a positive answer. Let's go through this one because I do want to cover over the last few. Let's change those 2 negatives into a positive. The 8 just comes down, and this also comes down. And this is a question that we've been doing for the last 5 minutes. So we have 2 negatives and 8 positives minus 2 negatives and 8 positives. So the answer is going to be positive. There's way more positives than there are negatives. I'm going to drop the signs and I'm going to say biggest number minus the smallest number is equal to 6, and it is a positive answer, so there's my answer. 17 minus 15 is 2, but the answer is negative, so you got exactly. Don't know what that means, but cheers. All right, I'm going to keep going with these. 23 minus 8. I'm going to break this up into the positives and the negatives. I have way more positives. The answer is going to be positive. And I take the biggest number minus the smallest number. And this is just like the ones we've done 2 or 3 years ago. 23 minus 8, I think it's 15. This is where I'd get a calculator to check my answers, because my mental math isn't perfect all the time. Cool. 14 plus minus 3. So I have 14 positives and minus 3 as a negatives. I have way more positives, so the answer is going to be positive. I'm going to take the biggest number and I'm going to subtract the littlest number, which is 11, and then the answer is positive. So there's my answer. Let's see if I can make this even fuzzier. Nice. Okay, same with this one. Oops, that's way too thick. See, maybe that'll work. This is like saying 32 minus 16. Oh, I don't like that writing as much. Okay. This is like 32 minus 16. More positives than there are negatives. So the answer is going to be positive. 32 minus 16, I know in my head that it's 16 and it's a positive. So that's going to be my answer right there. Okay, 10 minus negative 9. Well, I know when I subtract a negative, it becomes a positive. So I have 10 plus 9. This is the easiest one this whole day. 19. Except I shouldn't write in this other screen. Oh, and this is, again, this is maybe even easier, although that's harder math. 5. When you subtract a negative, it's like adding a positive. 5 plus 8, it's like 5 plus 5 plus 3, which is 13.
Hello. I'm looking for.
Okay. This is an interesting one. I don't know that we've run into one of these ones. So this is a really good one to look at. So you're starting at minus 5 and you're going backwards even farther, negative by 6. And I should have done one of these examples because I didn't actually cover this. So that's really good that I'm covering this now. Let's look at this as like a number line. There's 0. There's minus 5. We're subtracting 6 more, so we're going all the way back here to minus 11. So when you have this, it's easy to do in your calculator. Minus 5 minus 6, or it's negative 5 minus 6. And essentially, you know that it's going to be super negative because you start in the negative and you're going even more into the negatives. So the answer is going to be negative. And really what you do is you have to add these. Again, it doesn't make any sense in terms of coming up with a rule. But if you think of it as on the number line, you start at minus 5 and you're going backwards, even more towards the negatives, but 6 more towards the negatives. Okay, this is a much better one. Because I know that those two, when you subtract a negative, it makes a positive. So minus 3 plus 5. You have 3 negatives and 5 positives. The answer is going to be positive. I'll take the biggest number minus the smallest one, and it's 2, and it's positive 2, so that's my answer there. Okay, we're getting through this, you guys. Minus 10 plus minus 10 is one of these ones again. It's very similar to this one. You'd say minus 10, subtract even another 10. So you start at negative 10. Here, I'm going to make this my number line. Oops. I need to know how to draw straight lines here. Oops. Now I've gone and changed my pen color. Sorry, guys. Minus 10, minus another 10. So I'm going to start at minus 10 here. And I'm going to keep going back even more towards the negative, another 10. So minus 20. And this one is sort of a trick question. Subtracting a negative makes a positive, or an adding. Subtracting negative means you're adding a positive. But I have minus 10 plus 10. So again, on the number line, I'm thinking about it here. We're going to start at negative 10. You're going to go forward 10 in a positive direction, and you end up at 0. So again, there's the answers for these ones. Hopefully it wasn't too crazy. This is a really good thing. It's a terrible message I'm going to tell you, so don't tell your parents. So here's an easy way to remember multiplying and dividing negatives. When you multiply a positive times a positive, you always get a positive. If you multiply a positive times a negative, you get a negative. If you multiply a negative times a positive, you get a negative. And lastly, you get a negative times a negative is positive. You go, okay, Tim, I'm never going to remember that. So here's one way to remember it. When good things happen to good guys, it's good. When good things happen to bad guys, it's bad. And when bad things happen to good guys, it's also bad. And this is the worst one, is when bad things happen to bad guys, it's good. And that is maybe morally corrupt, but it's an easy way to get the message across. Here's another way of thinking about it. And this is another one of these clouds that you can color in with your pencil crayons. If there's an odd number of negatives, then the answer is negative. And if there's an even number of negatives, then the answer is positive. So if it's odd, like 1 or 3 or 5 negatives in the multiplication or the division, then the answer is always going to be negative. If there's 0 negatives, or 2 or 4 or some even number, then it's always going to be positive. So this is, oops. So this is really the take-home message here. All right, and I can't draw my clouds with my pen here very well. But, so I'm going to show you a couple examples. 3 times 5, it's positive 3 times a positive 5. So positive times positive, good things happening to good guys is a good thing. So it stays good. Or there's an even number. There's 0 negatives, which is even, which means that the answer is positive. Here we go, minus 3 times 2. There's 1 negative, and the 1 negative means that it's an odd number, so the answer is going to be negative. And then you just do the multiplication just regular. Here's another one, 4 times minus 3. There's 1 negative in there, which is odd, so the answer is going to be negative. And the last one is 2 negatives, which is even number, so the answer is going to be positive. Bad things happen to bad guys, so it's good. Which is a terrible example. All right, let's look and see what we got. So what I'd like to do is do a couple of these, and then we're going to move on to the home stretch here, which is putting it all together, and we're doing BEDMAS with negatives. And I would love to chat. I'd love to do 2 more examples or 3 examples of those Again, I see that I have 1 minute left, but I'm just going to go over time for a couple minutes because I had to do all that talking at the start. So here we go. Oops. Okay. So multiplying and dividing negatives. I'm going to look right away. I'm going to look for negatives. There's one negative in both of these numbers, so the answer is going to be negative. 3 times 7 is 21. Here, 6 divided by -2. So it's a multiply or divide, so this rule works. There's a positive, but one negative, so the answers could be negative. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, this last one, the third one, -6 times -4. There's 2 negatives, which is an even number, so the answers could be positive. I'm just going to put plus, but I just know that the answer is going to be positive. 6 times 4 is 24. So the answer is positive 24. And the last one, 6 times -10. One negative. So the answer is going to be negative. 6 times 10 is 60. And we're going to work through it. And we'll cover over these ones in a minute too. I just want to do the putting it all together, so the BEDMAS and the negatives. And then what I'll make sure to do is to really be more efficient in my talking next session. Okay, so I'm just going to write my BEDMAS here for the question A. Okay, this bracket is only here to say that it's a -6. So I don't have to do anything. It's just it's -6 inside. So that's like saying 42 divided by -6 plus 5. I just don't want you to think, okay, is this a divide or is this a minus? So in terms of the BEDMAS, because it's just one number, I can leave that bracket just by itself. So in BEDMAS, I'm looking for brackets, but there's nothing to do in here, so I can skip that. There's no exponents. There is a division. Cool, so 42 divided by -6. So let's think about this. We have one negative, so the answers could be negative. And now we can go through 42 divided by 6, and in your calculator even if you want. You're going to come up with -7 plus 5. Now this is like, I'm going to just put it in brackets because it's a -7, or -7, sorry. So we're doing brackets, but this is just a number inside of the brackets, so you can sort of ignore that. Oops. Exponents, there's nothing, no division, no multiplication, addition. So let's add these. So again, there's a few ways to do this, but the way that I'm trying to do it is I'm going to say, okay, how many negatives are there? There's 7 negatives and there's 5 positives. So the 7's going to win out. There's more negatives. So the answer is going to be negative. Then I'm going to take the big number minus the small number after I've dropped all the signs, gives me 2. But I know that my answer is negative. And I did that terribly, so I'm just going to write it out here. Okay, I hope that makes sense to everyone, and I'm just going to keep going with these. Okay, oh, there's only 4 of them, so this isn't so bad. And thank you again for hanging in with me. All right, let's talk BEDMAS about this one. So this is just, these brackets are only in to show that it's a negative. Same with this set. So we don't really have to do those brackets, but we definitely have to with this. There's 2 different numbers we have to do something with. We're going to subtract them. So let's figure this out. Inside the brackets first, we have to figure out what 3 minus -4 is. Oh, these are cool though, because the minus turns into a plus. So remember, when you subtract a negative, it's like adding a positive. And now I'm going to continue doing my brackets. So -21 divided by 3 plus 4, 7. Cool. Now I'm back to my BEDMAS. I've done the brackets. I've done no exponents, but the division. So let's do the division part. So I have 1 negative and a positive. So 1 negative means the answer is going to be negative. 21 divided by 7 is going to be 3. And my answer is -3. So again, I'm going to write my BEDMAS here. So brackets, these ones are just number, the brackets are just holding the numbers so I know what a negative is. So that's fine. Exponents, nothing. Division, nothing. Multiplication, let's do the multiplication first. So this stays the same. -4 times 2, there's one negative, so the answer is going to be negative. Bad thing happens to a good guy, it's a bad thing, so it's bad. 4 times 2 is 8. And now I'm done the multiplication. I want to do my addition here. 6 plus -8. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, there's 8 negatives, 6 positives, which is bigger. Well, it's 8 negatives, so the answer is going to be negative. Is negative. Then I'm going to take the biggest number. I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to do it here. Minus the smallest number is equal to 2, but the answer is negative, so the answer is -2. Yeah. And I hope this is making sense to everyone. I really do. If I'm confusing you, please let me know. I'll try to change my way. All right, this last question. Hopefully you guys have had a good start on it. Otherwise, I hope that you can follow along. I'm going to write my BEDMAS. This is your 10-second head start. All these brackets are just holding numbers. And you'll see this sometimes in math. It's just to make things more clear. It's not because we want you to do anything inside of those brackets. If there was like a 3 minus 4, then you'd have to do something inside because there's two different numbers combined with an add, subtract, multiply, divide. But if it's just a number, it's those brackets are just holding those numbers to make them more clear. So I don't have any brackets. I don't have any exponents, thank goodness. But I have a division, so let's do the division first. Yeah, I know it's a little confusing, Edmund. And what I'm hoping to do is I'll go through another couple examples, which will hopefully make a bit more sense. Hang in there and it will. I'm going to stay on for however long I'm needed here, and you can ask me a million questions. So in the division, -21 divided by 3. So let's deal with the negatives first. I have one negative and one positive. One negative means that the answer is going to be negative. It's a bad thing happening to a good guy, which is bad. So I'm going to give a bad. And then 21 divided by 3 is 7. This just drops down. Okay, now I remember that when I subtract a negative, it's like adding a positive, right? So I'm just dropping this down and I'm changing this. So instead of minus a -4, it's adding a 4. And then we're back to one of our questions that we're getting quite used to right now, which is going to be, how many negatives do I have? I have 7 negatives and I have 4 positives. This guy is the winner, so my answer is going to be negative in the end. I'm going to take the big number minus the small number, regardless of the sign. 7 minus 4 is equal to 3. But my answer is going to be negative because I have more negatives. So the answer is going to be -3. Remember that we're looking for an even or an odd number of negatives. If we have an even number like 2 or 0 or 4, the answer is going to be positive. If we have an odd number like 3 of these, or one of them, no, there's 2 of them in that one, sorry, but an odd number like 3 or 1, the answer is negative. So you can figure out all the negatives and positives right off the bat. You can just say, oh, this is going to be a positive, this is going to be a negative, this is going to be a positive. You can figure that out right away. And that's typically what I do, is when I'm doing these kind of questions, is I look first at the negatives. So negative divided by negative, oh, it's 2 negatives, which means it's a positive answer. And then I worry about the numbers. 45 divided by 5, in your calculator, you get an answer like 9. And there's my answer for that one. Sorry for the scribbles. And Let's do the F here. There's 1 negative, 2 negative, 3 negatives. 3 negatives is an odd number, so the answers could be negative. Because if I multiply these two first, I get a negative times a negative is a positive 18. But now I get a negative, multiply by a negative 2, so now I have 1 negative. Good things happen to a bad guy, so it's bad. The fast way to do it, though, is just count the number of negatives in the multiplication. 1, 2, 3, so the answer is odd or negative. And then I can just multiply these. 3 times 6 is 18, times 2 is 36. Again, I really apologize if I'm going too fast here. With this one, we have to think about BEDMAS first. It doesn't actually make a difference in this question, but most of the time, you have to think about BEDMAS all the time. So I'm going to do this one first because it's the division, BEDMAS, the division. Let's do division first. So this could be -9 times, and then 6 divided by -2 is 1 negative, so the answer would be negative. And then I'm going to do the actual math. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Cool. Now I can concentrate on the multiplication part. Negative times a negative gives me a positive, or 2 negatives, which is even number, gives me a positive. 9 times 3 is 27. Okay. And last, almost but not least, oops, come on, why is that coming? There we go. Let's remember BEDMAS in here. I'm really tempted to multiply by 5, but I have to do the brackets first. So let's do the brackets first. 6 minus 10. I have 6 positives, 10 negatives. The answer is going to be negative. I have more negatives than this one. This is a plus or minus, so more negatives. So the answer is going to be negative. 10 minus 6 is 4. I just take the biggest minus the smallest, regardless of the sign, but I know that my answer is going to come out as negative. So -4 times 5. Okay, so this is an easy one now. So negative times a positive gives me a negative. 1 negative means it's odd, so the answer will be negative. And then I can just do the math. 4 times 5 is 20. And Viola, I think we're done. That sheet